Good evening, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's enjoying the day, living life, loving life. Wanted to talk to everybody tonight a little bit more about this, the mathematical equations that we deal with in life in regards to language. And I wanted to start with Vatican tonight. Because I want people to understand a little bit of history about the Vatican in regards to the way we operate in today's world, particularly with commerce. Because the Vatican is simply a place where the Catholic religion established a building over the top of St. Peter's grave, called the St. Peter's Basilica at first, and changed later on to Vaticanus. The origin of the word that we use today, Vatican, comes from Vaticanus. And literally what it means, and in mathematics, this is why I say mathematics is so important in language. It affects not just the way we construct our letters and words and sentences and everything, but it tells us about the construction of the word from its origin through etymology. So through a mathematical timeline, a chronological timeline, if we go back to the origin of the word, we can better understand its creation. And so when we look at Vatican today, it originated from two words that were put together. One was Vatic, and of course the other in Vaticanus is anus. Now, when we look at the word Vatic, it literally means to foresee, to foretell. And when we look at the word anus, in the aspect that they looked at it back in that day, it was a port. Because if you look at the history of St. Peter's grave, where it's located, it's on the river. It's on the banks of a river called the Tiber River, and therefore it was a Vatic port. Okay? But the word anus itself, in regards to Vatic, when you put it together mathematically, Vatic first, to foresee a port that spews shit. So literally, that's what the Vatican means, if you take it to its etymological and mathematical roots. Now, it doesn't literally mean that they were prophesying shit, but it could very well be interpreted that way. So, again, might I remind everybody that in beginning was Word, and Word in the operation of law is all based on intent. So, yes, it does mean snake or viper also. And this is one of those things, that's a perfect example, Brian. I love that. Because in the Native American languages, they always spoke of the forked tongue. In other words, they were speaking lies, speaking things that weren't truth. And so in regards to that, again, it can be taken as literally spewing shit. So think about this stuff and realize that it's, no matter what you're doing, everything is accountable. There's a big word, accountable. That's a no contract term. In regards to David Wynn Miller, ACC, a vowel followed by two consonants. I won't go into that. That's a little bit more in depth when we talk about verb, adverb languages with dangling participles and all that. But in regards to the mathematics that we're using right now, again, I refer to etiology, etymology, and epistemology. The root words for etymology, root cause for etiology, and root knowledge for the study of knowledge. So we have to think about this mathematics and everything that we do in life, even in presenting words verbally. It's like I briefly touched on earlier. We have a word that's very commonly used, in which I first started this mathematical series of videos here a couple days ago in regards to representative. Now, the root word there, in regards to the aspect, the concept that I was portraying is present. Present. And you notice there's 3 different inflections on that word, and the different inflections are the different mathematical vibrations for the 3 different types of the word, spelled or symbolically written down as present. I present myself in the present time so that I can present a present to the court. All 3 different terms, or all 3 different words, and actually they are, in certain contexts, it could be considered a term, because again, we see a different root word by using sent with the suffix or prefix pre, present, present. And so in that reference, it's a term because the present thought is the intent. And so it's the present thought. The thought that's present. Or the thought that's been presented. And again, this is why it's so important that we realize that the true word is your own word. The right words for yourself are the words that you use. But remember that once you use them, either verbally or writtenly, contextually now, we have a variation that can happen. There's a possibility that you have either misconveyed your truth, or that somebody else might have interpreted your truth wrong, or in a different way. And so we have to go through, at that point, verbal discussion. And this is what we talk about when we talk about the Socratic method of law. When we go into these courts, and the courts are presenting this information, the Socratic method of law says that we make a rebuttal, not necessarily in a argumentative way, but in a presentment way, so that we can fill in certain gaps and closures. And then they have a chance to respond back. And it goes back and forth. It's a volley. It's actually a game of words. And that is your Socratic method of law. And Socrates was very good at law. And that's where you're... when you think about the words lawyer and attorney came much later in the timeline in regards to its construction. It didn't come about. It wasn't created until a later time period than that which a lawyer was. A lawyer derives from the word law crier. And it was a conjunction of the 2 words, and it came out Lawier. Today we use Lawer, and that is someone that is in law. That is someone who works in law. An attorney is someone who works at law. And so again, when we think about the mathematics of the words and we look at them etymologically in a chronological order, we get a mathematical sense of which one came first and what the true origins of each are, and therefore we're able to discern the differences. So, again, think about this stuff in all the words that you're using, and understand everything's based on mathematics. Anybody got any questions? I was hoping people would have some more comments and questions. There's another one. Somebody mentioned tax. In regards to mathematics, the word tax, T-A-X, tax, and the word task, T-A-S-K, can oftentimes be misconveyed or misconstrued, misheard or missaid, misstated, mispronunciated, whatever. And therefore, we have a discernment to make in what the word was actually said, task or tax. And when we think specifically about those two words, I want you to remember something. When we're put to task, we're put to an accomplishment. We're put to task. We've been given an accomplishment. When we're taxed, it's because somebody took advantage. And so even though they're polar opposites, their spelling and their pronunciation both come very close and can oftentimes lead to misconstruction. And that kind of stuff in the English language is done on purpose. So again, that's why it's important to look at the etymology, the origin, the root of the words. And then, of course, etiology is the root of the cause. And then epistemology is the root of the knowledge itself. So, and it shows in mathematics even. You know, actually the English language is based on various different forms of Latin, Greek, French, Roman, and a lot of it's deeply rooted in Hebrew, the original Hebrew languages. So again, that's a good question. It's not all particularly Latin, and that's why it's important to look up those etymological roots, the root origins, because the English language uses so many different languages combined together. So again, think about this stuff and realize what I was just getting ready to explain is it shows in math. We have two different forms of math. Just like we have multiple different forms of English. We have a written English, and in that written English, we have block letter English and cursive English. So those are just two different codes, or two different languages, known as two different codes, both recognizable by most people that speak the verbal code of the same. They're all the same. They're just described differently, using different methods of mathematics. That's all it is. Ebonics. When we talk about Ebonics, I got into a discussion about this earlier today. You can look up a lot of old documents, and you'll see words that just somehow they just don't make sense. And we see this in pronunciations of common places or things like Norfolk, Virginia. It is not spelled as you can see on some birth certificates, N-A-R-F-U-K. It is not Norfolk, though that's the way a lot of people that were somewhat illiterate pronounced it. And that's where Ebonics come from. It's still somewhat recognizable, and it's used at such an extent in some situations that not only is it recognizable, but it's acceptable as the norm when we spell Norfolk, N-O-R-F-O-L-K, but it's normal now to pronounce it as Norfolk. That's your Ebonics. When we think about the actual mathematics of it, though it could still be understood, the equation works out the same. It's just somebody used a different set of mathematics, and it worked that way because it was verbal. When we see things written down on paper, we most often have to take them for their literal sense by figuring out the math of them. Is it being used in the correct construct? Like your conjunctions. Bill Clinton was a great one. One of the greatest literature quotes I've ever heard. Despite the audacity this man had to rip people off and commit all these crimes, he said, in trial, under oath, and it's on public record. Well, that would depend on what the definition of the word is. So literally, you do have to break everything down. And so when I talk about words like representative, things that are taking two words and put together that can then be contracted down to the root word, that's what we're talking about, terms and conditions. We've put existing conditions onto a word by adding suffixes and prefixes that now make it a term, and that's a contract. You can contract that word down to its origin, and that's what we need to do in all these documents. When you think about mathematics, look up law of continuity and law of closure. Law of continuity and law of closure. I spoke about it earlier in my video today. You go out to the store and you get a puzzle in a box. I don't care if it's a 10-piece puzzle. I don't care if it's a 50-piece puzzle. I don't care if it's a 100-piece puzzle. I don't care if it's a 1,000-piece puzzle. There is closure on the box itself. It gives you a full picture describing exactly what it looks like when you put it all together in its continuous pattern. When you open the box and it's all distributed all apart, it's been taken apart, and it's not continuous, that is disclosure. So in these contracts, when we actually think we're asking for full disclosure, what we're actually doing is asking them to keep it ripped apart, keep ripping it apart. And what we need to do is contract everything down to its original form, fill in the gaps to give it continuity for closure from point A to point B to prove that you are innocent. Pure and simple. Yes, Michelle Marie says there are over 20 different meanings to the definition of the word is, and that depends on what context you are using it in. That's why I say it's so important, the placement of the word, the placement of the words before and after it, any suffixes and prefixes used, the punctuation marks used. Delivery, another one. Delivery. What is livery? Look up livery. It's very important in the financial world. And so when we think about delivery, it's the total opposite. Again, that's why it's so important to look up the etymology of these words. Anytime you see suffixes and prefixes, look up the etymology of that root word and find out what that means, and then put your suffix or prefix on it to find out what it is, what the literal sense it is likely being used in. Again, there's still room for misconveyance and misinterpretation, so you still have to clarify even once you look up the etymology. You still have to do your clarification. Again, back to the Socratic method of law. Back and forth, back and forth. You're never going to be able to submit a document that's going to be acceptable all at once. They're going to want a volley back and forth. Yes, that's Michelle. That's who I was quoting, and I said it's one of the best quotes I've ever heard in regards to the literary language and how things are used. We have to remember each and every stroke of the pen has its importance. Each and every last one. We have the first stroke of the pen all the way to the last stroke of the pen, and in accordance with the mathematics of how it's constructed, they will be able to tell whether you know what you're talking about, mathematically, while at the same time using that math against you, using multiple languages that you seem to recognize. Well, let me point out to you, every court of law, and this is why they have interpreters available, has to, it is a must, come down to a one-to-one communication. Otherwise, there is no resolution. And this is technically why in reality and perspective, to claim oneself to be an idiot throughout the entire process, anytime they ask anything, I'm sorry, but I'm an idiot. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand. Technically, that's a way to get off of any of their charges. But when we look at the again the Socratic method of law, it's a matter of debate back and forth. And to claim to be an idiot all the way through is not an actual debate, and therefore likely not going to be successful. And that's why I urge everybody to learn this mathematics and stuff and start applying it, because the more we use it, the more we assert it, the more we correct things by filling in those gaps, the more continuity we have and the more success we have, and therefore more continuity in that success. We have to be more continuative ourselves. We have to give more closure ourselves. And to do so, we have to know more ourselves. We have to have more knowledge. We have to be able to apply the information. To sit back and be a couch warrior does you no good. None whatsoever. If you want to get here, and you might want to call me a couch warrior all you want. A lot of people don't see me do anything but get on here and posting information and videos. But I assure you, they watch my videos. They watch my page to this day. They still enforce a protection order on me, the DA, local district attorney. If you think they're not enforcing that protection order and still keeping an eye on me like Big Brother, hi, bitch. They know if they ever want to bring me into their courts again, they've already acknowledged that they no longer wish to contract by placing that protection order against the person that they claim that I have responsibility over, that I've never been lawfully assigned or taken an oath to. When you learn the proper words, that accord and satisfaction doesn't even apply because there is no contract. Accord and satisfaction relates to commercial terms. I have nothing to do with concord and satisfaction. I'm going to make a full-out claim. You people want to force your bullshit on me? Sorry, ain't going to work. In beginning was word, and it's the proper use of the right words that will defeat them. Get away from all their bullshit ambiguity. And it comes right down to using their forms, too. A lot of people still do. I see so many people out there saying, fill out this form and fill out this form. And I posted information on forms and stuff, and I've tried to explain to people how to fill them out. You can use their forms, but you have to correct them. All of their forms are wrong if you want to use them to your advantage. If you want to use them to your advantage, you have to correct the code, the language that they're using mathematically by filling in all the missing parts, giving it closure and continuity so that they can comprehend exactly where you're coming from as an American national born of the family Little, given a Christian calling, Keith Orland. And I was born live at Dubuque on Iowa. That right there is one of the simplest claims to nationality you can get because you don't use any of their terms and conditions. You use real words. Period. You can't get any less ambiguous than that. And that's what they do. They use all this ambiguity. They tell you the same definition 3 different times, and then they use 4 different words to mean the same thing. Transportation, traffic, and commerce are all the same thing. Business is the same thing as trade. Trade is the same thing as traffic. Come on. Get down to the reality. I made a fair exchange from one man to another. No third parties. Fuck you. Get your nose out of my affairs. Learn this stuff, people, and assert it. The more you learn it, it's like that commercial you see on that you used to see on TV about drugs. I do more drugs so I can work more, so I can make more money, so I can get more drugs. So I work more so I can make more money, so I can get more drugs, so I can do more, work more, so I can make more money, so I can get more drugs. It's insane. The more you learn, the more you assert it. The more you assert it, the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you assert it. The more you assert it, the less fear you have. So learn this stuff and realize, comprehend, become cognizant of it, that it is all mathematical. And all you got to do is start putting 1 and 1 together. And you'll come up with 2. Unless, of course, you get into numerology. Let's talk some mathematics and numerology. I explained one time, I did a short video on 5 plus 5 equals 9. We talk about the numbers 3, 6, and 9 being magical numbers in numerology. And I'll tell you, 3, 6, and 9 are existential, extra realistic numbers. They deal more with the metaphysical reality than the physical reality. And the way I'll explain this is the 5 plus 5 equals 9. In the physical reality, we realize that 5 plus 5 equals 10. But in the metaphysical reality, and I want everybody to think about this because we're speaking metaphysical, so let's think about it metaphysically, mentally, and draw yourself a 3-sided pyramid. So you can have 3 sides plus the bottom. I want you to draw yourself a 3-sided pyramid in your mind. Now we're going to double it. We're going to add another one. We're going to have 2 3-sided pyramids side by side. Okay? Now you got those 2 pyramids, 4 sides, side by side. I want you to flip one up this way. So the point is this way. And then I want you to flip the other one up so that the point is this way. So now you have 2 4-sided pyramids that have points facing each other instead of upwards or anywhere else, right? Okay. This is one body. This is one body. They're going through a Socratic method of debate to try to come to terms of a contract. They get closer and closer to the terms of the contract. Now each body has its own mind within the center of it. Each body has its own mind within the center of it. It is the center of its thought. It is the center of its intent. So as they debate back and forth and they get closer and closer together and combine until the minds finally meet. Now you have a pyramid within a pyramid. Okay? Now if you take those 2 pyramids separately and you count them points, you've got 1, 2, 3 at each point of the base. Then you've got the point at the top. And then you've got the point at the middle, which is the mind. So you've got 5 points in each pyramid. So you started out with those 2 pyramids with 5 points. You tilted them up. You decided you're going to contract, come together. The meeting of the minds, metaphysically now in contractual terms, means that 5 plus 5 equals 9. Because if you meet the minds together and make them the one dot, you now only have 9 dots of connection. Draw it out on a piece of paper and see what I'm talking about. You'll come up with the exact same thing. So the magic of numbers works in many ways, and it depends on your intent. and understand that 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 0 are all physical numbers. They relate to the physical world. 3, 6, and 9 relate to the physical world, but they also relate very much more so to the metaphysical. Because you can do all kinds of mathematics in the metaphysical world, in the quantum physics, and see that 3, 6, 9 are just everywhere. Everything is pretty much dependent on 3, 6, 9. You look at your the Fibonacci curve. Research this stuff, people. Fibonacci curve. F-I-B-A-N-O-C-C-I. F-I-B-A-N-O-C-C-I. Fibonacci curve. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that you can research in regards to the magic of the numbers 369, or the importance of the numbers 369, the construction of 369, Tesla 369. Just Google 369 and it'll tell you all kinds of information. And it's very important in all mathematics as well. Think about this stuff, people. That's why I urge you to realize that the things like Miranda rights, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Bitch, you can't even bring shit in court of law. Under contract, you have to go in a court of a civil court of contract, and that's not a court of equity where it's fair and justable, or fair and just, fair and impartial. In a court of contract, you have a contract, and if there's a breach of contract somewhere, they're going to treat you in debt to detriment. They're going to take what they deem fair and just to their supposed fictional harm. And therefore, it's not a court of equity. You've got your natural law jurisdiction. You've got your equitable law jurisdiction, which is like your common law. And that's where your actual UCC actually sits. Your UCC you can look at as your actual common law now. Think about that. All kinds of commercial, and that's pretty much all over the world. UCC you can look at as your common law. It even states in there so that all the laws are uniform throughout all the jurisdictions. And then you have your admiralty, and then you have your maritime. So you got your natural jurisdiction, you got your equitable jurisdiction, your admiralty jurisdiction, which is your maritime or your military jurisdiction, and then your maritime, which is your commercial jurisdiction. Natural jurisdiction, which is your ecclesiastical, equitable jurisdiction, which is your physical jurisdiction of man, and then your military admiralty is your physical jurisdiction of man as force of arms, and then your commercial jurisdiction of man in dealing with contracts. So it's all mathematical, and you really need to catch on to it. I don't want to make it too long. People getting bored with numbers, but I hope everybody's been listening along and understand that we need to start filling in the gaps in these documents that they're presenting us through a Socratic method, to give continuity and closure. Start using the right words. That's your jurisdiction. That is your true jurisdiction. The right words. And just like everything else in life, as I've stated, everybody has their own rights. My rights may not be the same as yours, but if I believe I have them rights, I have to be able to believe that you have them rights too. So we have to think about the mathematics and understand that everybody has the right to express themselves, and we just have to be able to interpret it and then clarify it. If it wasn't for you people, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless. Have a great night. Bye-bye.